So we're going to shoot into a video today on what it is that I can see by looking into your eyes. What do I see when I look in your pupils? And it's funny because I've talked about this before, that I can read a lot about people just by looking at them. And it's funny to me because after years and years of going out and working on social awareness, this stuff is really, really obvious. And it shocks me that not everybody gets it, but then I forget that not everybody's had the time to think about this or to look at it. So I actually took the time to write down some different things that I look at in your pupils, and maybe this will help you to see what's going on with you, but also to see what's going on with other people. And I want to tell you that just like a tracker who maybe could be out here in nature, we're in Acadia, Maine right now, up in the Northeast, just like a tracker who's out in nature, they would be able to see little things in the environment and see what kind of animals came through, and they get that just by paying attention and actually focusing and learning. You can learn this as well. This is very, very, very learnable. I want to emphasize that to you. So this will hopefully give you a bit of an introduction to that way of thinking, and I think we're going to make some good progress here, okay? So the basic framework that we're going to give, and I've just like laid this out for precision, is this idea that, and this is going to be a bit of a curveball for you, a bit of a strange frame to come from, because we're talking about pupils. I'm going to say to you that everybody has either a connection or perhaps an absence of a connection to their higher power. And so what I mean by that is that you can sense when somebody is tapped into the present moment. They're tapped into present energy. Some people might even call that being connected to God. Some people, just a way of explaining it, right? Some people are more connected to the present or connected to their higher power, or you might call that connected to God, than others. And then in seeing that, you can tend to predict behavior as well. Kind of an interesting thing. So I'm going to break this down as the energy of a baby, and that's just because it's unconditioned consciousness. A Derper, an executor, a spiritual woo-woo person who's maybe kind of ungrounded. They're very connected but ungrounded. I'm going to say a transcendent executor. That's somebody who's grounded and connected. And lastly, somebody who has an inversion, which is, in effect, a psychopath. Or people who have that kind of psycho energy. And I'm going to break it down as far as the appearance, what it's going to look like, what kind of energy they're tapped into or not tapped into, and choke points in the energy, and then what you're going to see in the pupils. So I thought that might be of interest to you. Okay, so a baby. What does a baby's eyes look like? Well, I think you know what that looks like. I mean, I'll describe it here. I think you're aware of this. But what I wrote here was visibly filled and brimming with life, but naive. So I'm really lucky. My son Tristan, he's still 2 years old. And I'm really blessed to be his dad. I think he has this kind of like messianic vibe to him. It's weird. He really comes across like an old soul and tapped in a level that I've never seen in a kid before. I have 10 out of 10, like a million out of 10 high hopes for him. I've never seen anything like it. I'm very, very blessed to be his dad. It's an honor. And so, and just watching him grow is an honor. With all my children, I feel that way. But seeing my son Tristan, I see him every day, and his eyes, they kind of have this like Eckhart Tolle vibe to them, right? They have this almost like a spiritual guru, right? Babies can almost be like a real life spiritual guru, but of course they don't have a lot to say, But they have that vibe. They're very connected. So Tristan, my son, who's 2, he has not been traumatized yet in any way, shape, or form that I'm aware of. So he doesn't carry that negativity. And he lives in a world that is like a fantasy world where his brothers love him and his parents love him and he's happy and everybody's cheering. And he hasn't been through that pain yet that you or I have, which is so beautiful to see, that unconditioned consciousness. So it really has that vibe like he's connected to his higher power, connected to God, but there's a naivete there, right? He's naive. So you can see that in his eyes because he's going to look around, everything's new, and he doesn't have that awareness to even block what energy is coming in. So and this is why it's so disgusting when people would traumatize a baby, because they don't have a defense there. So they're wide open, but they don't have a defense. I remember, I'll tell you a funny story. I was once at this kind of trendy grocery store in LA called Erewhon. And there's a guy there who used to work at the Tonic Bar. He's actually a little bit of a famous guy in LA. His name's Truth Colkins. And this is back when he used to work there like 10 years ago. You can look him up. He's an incredibly interesting person. And so his name's Truth Colkins, very interesting person. And I remember he was sitting there at the Tonic Bar and he was telling me these incredible insights that he had. They're really out there. I don't even know what I think of them, but they're just kind of mind expanding just to see his perspective. And for 2 hours, I sat there drinking this tonic, right? And he was just saying these incredible things, and my mind was like wide open. But I remember at the end of the night, I went to go pay, and I think I stayed like 5 minutes too long, and the cashier started yelling at me. And it was funny because I was so open after all the incredible, like, kind of different ideas that he told me. Again, I don't even know what I make of them, but they're just so interesting and fascinating. I remember the cashier started yelling at me, and I felt like 10x traumatized. I was like, for about a couple hours after, I felt like I needed to vomit. And the reason why was I think that I allowed myself to be so open to what he was relaying to me that I kind of let my shield down, which I think is a powerful thing to do. But I got yelled at and it really hurt, right? And children have that, right? Where they're wide open, kind of connected to source, connected to God, as they'd say, but they're naive and there's no protection there. So you can see this in the pupils by how wide open it is. You know, you'll see the pupils are wide open and they're looking around, and there's sort of a glassiness and joy in the eyes. But then at the same time, there's a naive sense and also a lack of a shield. So just something to be aware of as far as what it is that you're looking at. The appearance is kind of glassy, visibly filled and brimming with life, but also naive. They're tapped into source. And then as far as choke points, there's no ego to choke the energy yet. We're going to get into that later. There's no ego to choke out the energy. But also, and there's no trauma yet. But again, they're wide open, so that's going to come soon. Now, the next one I'm going to explain, and again, looking in the eyes, is a derper. A derper is somebody who just sort of derps around. To me, what a derper is somebody whose primary modality of life is being numb, following the path of least resistance, not wanting to be in their prefrontal cortex, and being on autopilot. Very, very common that you'll see this. You know, we've seen a lot of events in the past year or two with all this crazy stuff happening, and we say to ourselves, you know, we're so clearly being confronted with just shovels of nonsense, and, you know, you'd think that larger humanity would wake up and say no to that, but instead what happens is that most people are kind of following that path of least resistance and want to stay in autopilot and wanting to be numb. So they're very easily bought off, and they want to stay in autopilot and they want to be numb. This is somebody who you're dealing with maybe at a store where, you know, they're trying to go home 5 minutes early. There's not a lot of pride in their work. They want to go home 5 minutes early so that maybe they can smoke a blunt or so they can watch some TV and kick back. That's all they care about. That's their main accomplishment, is just not being held responsible. Very little pride in their work. So their energy, or what do their eyes look like? What do you see in their pupils? Glazed over, because the energy is choked out. You'll see this, you walk down the street. The energy in a lot of people is very choked out. It's very sad. And likewise, what gives them energy is being on autopilot, being numb, being told what to do, and then rationalizing this is okay. That's their version of energy. Very, very sad. The choke points are past trauma, and then consuming fuel to numb themselves. So as they continually numb themselves, that's their version of fuel. So you see this in the eye. They struggle to focus on anything. Their eyes are not, you know, their eyes kind of wander around, but not wandering around like a kid, where a kid is just taking in the world. Their eyes are wandering around from numbness to autopilot to avoiding thinking to being in sort of a stupor. And sadly, that's what the majority of us collectively in our society, that's kind of where we're at. Why is that? Well, you could say it's because we eat food that undernourishes the brain. We get bad sleep. Typically, we run on unnatural sleep patterns, consume stimulants like coffee and other things. That probably has some health properties too, but, you know, it can overstimulate. Wake up with alarms, have street lights coming through, so now your brain's undernourished, not getting good sleep. And then also, we're overstimulated with our media. Part of why I try to make longer videos is we are very, very, you know, we're bombarded with all these jump cuts and stuff. So basically, it's hard for people to even pay attention. Their attention span gets depleted. It's very, very sad, actually, what you see. And sadly, most of us are in that state. Hopefully, we can collectively wake up out of that, because humanity's got a lot of potential. So that'd be amazing. But that's what you'll generally see in the eyes, is that looking away from anything that requires attention, and just drained, right? There's huge choke points in the energy, kind of cut off from God. And when you're cut off from God, cut off from your higher power, then what happens is that you look for stimulus as a supplement for that. You look at numbness to get out of the negative feelings. You're so used to, there's a lack of comfort in your own skin. There's a heaviness to life, and things are hard. So you have to walk down the street and observe this. And then they just want to go into numbness. And you'll see this right in the eyes. And you'll see this is where their energetic choke points are. You know, when you're cut off from source, you pretty much just want to be numb. And that kind of, the way that happens in my view is that people get traumatized, right? It's almost like you're a balloon that's raising, and it's like these little demonoids come in and go, right? They shoot this sort of cable at you, almost like they're trying to shoot a whale, and they pull you down. And that becomes the access point for them to shoot negative energy into you. And then at that point, you just lack you lack the fight to want to maintain a proactive consciousness. You're just too tired to. It exerts, stacking if-then statements in your mind the way that an executor does is too difficult, and you just want to be numb and stay on autopilot. That becomes your paradigm. Very, very, very sad, but That's kind of what we're looking at. So what you basically see is that a Derper has been cut off and lacks willpower. What is an executor, and what do you see in the eyes of an executor? The way that I would describe that is it can be a little bit shark-like or laser-like, which actually can be a good thing to some extent, but shark-like and laser-like, constantly tightening a little bit by forcing through stress and stealing their inner resolve to resistance. They're also tired from thinking for themselves a lot, so there's a tiredness that happens that does run you down from having to think for yourself, right? The truth is that being cut off from your higher power makes you tired. Well, thinking for yourself makes you even more tired, right? And if you're cut off from that higher power, then thinking for yourself can be exhausting. So it's good that an executor is somebody who actually fights through the derp and gets things done and executes, right? So you can be a baby, derper, executor, somebody who's not on autopilot, somebody who uses their logical mind, but they may also be cut off from their higher power. That happens as well, but they can execute. So what gives them energy? Self-generating wins, strong ego, comparison, and validation. It gives them energy. It's amazing that they're able to do that. Funny how that works, right? But the choke points are that they're cut off from source, and they need the validations of wins. And so what happens is that the energy tightens and gets very narrow because they're cut off from source, and they get energy purely from winning, so they need that win, and that's when the energy gets very, very down. So you'll see some entrepreneurship teachers, and I will actually do this kind of a teaching for entrepreneurs at times to resonate with them, is basically it's very like, you're going to do it. Forget about everybody else. You get it done, right? It's because it's like that energy is tightening and tightening and tightening. And it's very enlivening and energizing for people in an executor mode. But if you're cut off from source, you kind of need that. You need to sack those wins. You need your ego to be enhanced. Next up is a spiritual person. This is what you call a woo-woo person. This is somebody who is very optimized for feeling good. They're very tapped into source, but they're not grounded. And I've got a lot of friends like that in LA. It's sad, also admirable. Some of my happiest friends really, really struggle to execute. It's kind of an interesting thing. They're very spiritual people, but they're cut off from their own human abilities, which is unfortunate. So what I've noticed with them is that rather than being laser-like, their eyes and in their pupils looks diffused like a lamp. It's like a diffused lamp. So they're brimming with energy just like a baby and glazed over similar to a derper. So, brimming with energy and tapped in like a baby, but they have that kind of lack of focus like a derper. It can be a very syrupy or ungrounded or untethered. And then going from there, they're numbing themselves with spirituality in many cases. They call that spiritual bypassing. It's in the same way that a derper numbs themselves with being autopilot, a spiritual person numbs themselves with presence, actually, which is pretty sad. So they numb themselves from the challenges of life and don't face them. They can't focus their laser, so their eyes sometimes wander off. Energy, they're connected to source, which is amazing. But the choke points are they're ungrounded and they're constantly having to rationalize and spiritually bypass to stay positive and happy, which is unfortunate. Last major one before we go in the final one of inversion, which is kind of funny, is what we're just going to call a transcendent executor. That's somebody who is connected to source. Could call that connected to God or their higher power. Could be you. But also gets things done. And so what is the appearance in the eyes of somebody who is tapped in, but also gets a lot done? You accomplish your goals. What I would say, it has that soft, diffused lamp look, and yet a laser focus at the same time. It's kind of interesting. So brimming with energy like a baby, but also can focus like the executor. Where do they get their energy? They're connected to source, and they enjoy the process of creating wins, and then they use alignment with source to achieve this. So basically what you do is that rather than just feeding off just winning and ego, you just enjoy the process itself, and you align with that creative flow, and then you ride that, which is amazing, right? It's like a boat. In your boat, you could be paddling frantically, or you could throw up the sail, and then you just have the rudder, and then maybe use the oars when you need to. You're not opposed to it, right? The spiritual person's like, I'm never using the oars. I'm never using the oars. That's not spiritual. When in reality, it could be pragmatic at different points. So it's going to be spiritual, but not attached to being spiritual, to your detriment and to you not giving your gift. Now, just continuing down this path, so using alignment to source to achieve this, because energy is flowing through you, and then the more that you give your gift, the more that you're tapped into source, which is a beautiful and powerful thing. Very, very powerful thing. The more that you still the mind, the more that the highest good is obvious to you, right? Because you have discernment as you still the mind. Some people call that connecting the Tao, if you've ever read the Tao Te Ching. Identifying with the whole and yet simultaneously identifying with the nothingness that we are. We are the whole, and we are the nothingness simultaneously, having that epiphany. And then this motivates right action. So, you know, when you're connected to source, oftentimes right action becomes obvious to you. You know, we all come in and out of that. Nobody's perfect. Choke points. There's not really a lot of choke points. But eventually the body wears down. You need proactive recovery. I'm actually coming off of, funny enough, if I told you, I also want to say it. Yeah, I've been on the road now for maybe 3 or 4 months straight, and I've been running these huge seminars. I just came off of a 5-day seminar in New York. And, you know, I had very little sleep there because we're running it so long, and just shot out here to Acadia, Maine. So yeah, eventually my body starts to wear down. So you know, it's like my spirit's strong, my mind is lucid, but my body does start to wear down. My ability to, you know, have my voice boom and you know, my brain could have like slight little misfires here or there because, you know, we're burning the midnight oil. But actually, I just got in last night and I wanted to shoot a video here quickly. Maybe I'll do a little break today or for the rest of the day, and then I'll get back at it tomorrow. We're going to be shooting the main video, right? I'm actually out here, probably going to shoot, you know, 3 or 4 2-hour videos out here that'll be coming out next year. But I just want to get out something quickly for you. But yeah, my body will start to wear down no matter what I do, right? No matter how tapped in I could ever be, the body does wear down. I mean, that's the choke point, right? You might get too excited that you want to contribute too much. I can feel that way sometimes. You know, I just get so excited to contribute, I can wear myself down. And likewise, you slip up and you overdo it, which has learning curves. So remember that you can stay just as an executor, as a rejection of being a derper. But I feel like what you're doing is that's just one stepping stone, and you don't want to just stop there. In fact, if you just stop there, just as an executor, it's a little bit like plucking the fruit before it's too ripe, right? Like if you make an identity, I'm an executor, right? And you don't tap in, it's like you're forming your identity before seeing what your true potential is. And I think that's actually very unfortunate. You know, so you might get greater wins later if you cultivate a little bit more depth. Now, last one, and this is sort of a funny one, is a psychopath, and that's an inversion. And what's amazing about psychopathy, or what you call an inversion, is somebody who's coming from that frame, they actually feed off negativity. So many people that are you know, have psychopathy or sociopathy, anything that creates harm or destruction is actually what energizes them. Interesting, isn't it? So, you know, they get energized actually from harming people. Or from just doing anything the opposite, anything the opposite of good. Now, a psychopath is funny because the one condition that you'll ever see where the person doesn't want to be cured is a psychopath. And the reason why is because from a sociopath's perspective or a psychopath's perspective, they view it in their mind like empathy or being tapped in is actually disease. They view it like the empath is a fuel. Actually, funny I said that, Freudian slip. They view it like the empath is fuel to them, but also as a fool. They view them as a fool because to a psycho, they believe that they have higher discernment. They believe that they see the world very, very accurately. And they see people with empathy or people who think they're tapped in, right? Or they think they're tapped in, right? Basically making a fairy tale. So they view it like either you have all these weird kind of needs to empathize with other people that are limiting you. They view it like that. Or they view it like somebody's conscience is limiting them, or they view it like, you know, you need a fairy tale in order to function or to be at your best. You know, tapped in, right? Like, why do you need all that? So they view it like they see the cold, stark reality, and that really it's a dog-eat-dog world. Everybody is kind of hiding behind that mask and fake anyway, and that they would all be doing that to each other anyway. So they view it like they might as well just embrace that, and then just by coincidence, it makes them feel really good when they harm others. Just by coincidence, they enjoy that. It's like a shark kind of just going around. Shark is probably not connected to God at all. They just eat things at convenience, but maybe even a little darker than that, because they want to vandalize anything positive, either by killing it or harming it. Sometimes they even, you'll see that they actually they themselves are so disconnected from their higher power that they get energy from trying to torment people who are. They're drawn to it like a stalker. It's very, very fascinating actually to see it. You can read all about it. Books like Sociopath Next Door, Sociopath World, Wisdom of Psychopaths. You can learn about this actually. It's interesting. I've actually had sociopaths, psychopaths like proactively kind of being stalkers. Is fascinating. It doesn't frighten me at all. It's just fascinating to see it, where they're coming from, and to engage with them, and to look in their pupils and to see, you know, they'll come across as ultra confident, like almost like this impenetrable frame. But what it is, and they think it looks tough, but when I see that, it just makes me want to vomit, because if you want to talk about plucking the fruit before it's ripe, if you're having to tap into that to energize you, that is like really plucking the fruit before it's ripe. And they're not powerful at all. They're actually the opposite of powerful. They just don't see that. They see only what's right in front of them. They don't see the grander picture. Now, what will you see in the eyes of a psychopath? Often they'll mimic the facial expressions of regular people, and this is something that's called the uncanny valley. You can look this up. So, funny enough, in computer animation, if you get the animation to look more and more, say as an example, like a human, we begin to like it more and more. Wow, that looks more real. That looks more human. But at a certain point with the uncanny valley, what starts to happen is that it actually starts to feel disgusting. So a lot of time if you meet a psychopath, you feel the sickness in your stomach where you can't even look at them. They think they're intimidating you. They're like, yeah, what's up, right? They're like, hey, what's up, right? And you're just like, oh, you can't even maintain eye contact. They're like, why can't you look at me? And they think it's because they're dominant, but it's because you can feel a tangible revulsion when you look at them. And actually, if you're an empathetic person, you feel sympathy for them. It's sad. They're damned, and it's very sad. So they have this sort of mimicking of natural mannerisms that you'll see. It's called the uncanny valley. What gives them, their pupils also often, they can really stare at you like a laser, almost in the same way that somebody who we might call enlightened could do, but the enlightened person's tapped into their higher power, and a psychopath or someone in an inversion's tapped in their lower power. So it's fascinating how that works. Energy, harming others, negating life, vandalizing anything positive, comparing to other people because they can't feel happy, so they feel good by just the logical comparison to others. They need to feel like they're the best. The pain of others. They often like booze, cigars, hookers, because they resonate with harming fuels. So they've given themselves over to death, or the energy of death. So they like things that kind of feel good in the short term, but harm them in the long term. That's, I used to see Suge Knight rolling around in LA a lot. I live in Los Angeles. You see him just kind of puffing down these things that are slowly killing him, and he kind of feeds into that, right? You can tell he's given himself over. It's very fascinating. He would come across as ultra confident. Choke points. Eventually they destroy even themselves. That's why a lot of people in negativity become a suicide shooter. Lack of discernment from reticular activation system being manipulated by negativity. And the physical body starting to break down due to, basically due to, well, have you ever seen, in Star Wars, actually, George Lucas makes an incredible analogy of this. What he shows is the Emperor, he taps in the dark side of the Force, and then it begins to age him prematurely, right? So it's amazing the sun came out right as we're wrapping this up. It's beautiful. And beautiful, too. I'm about to start my proper deep video, so I'm going to jump into that. But anyway, you see the main point here, right? Which is that they're consuming a fuel that's harming them. So it's giving them a lot on the front, but harming them on the back. I've had friends, actually, who really worked to be very positive, and then what you saw later was they gave themselves over to the negativity, and they actually appeared more confident than ever. But they'd actually lost confidence. They'd lost confidence in themselves and their potential, and they took the easy way out, right? Like somebody who drinks alcohol, they look more confident, they're not. Well, in the same way, somebody who gives themselves over to the dark side, they're also not. Anyway, I hope that you understand this basic idea of how to look into the pupils, how to look into somebody's pupils from a standpoint of how connected they are. And that's one aspect of it. Are they a Derper, Executor, Transcendent Executor, woo-woo, somebody in an inversion? What are they? And where are they coming from? Fascinating just to see these different aspects of the psyche, of human nature, and just having that expansive ability to look at somebody and know where they're at. There's many, many other things that you can do for social awareness and social calibration to understand people, and we'll get more to that later. But in the meantime, I'm going to shoot into my proper video here, and excited to work with you further. Peace. So we're going to shoot into a video today on what is a really, really hot topic right now, which is this idea of should you do your own research or should you listen to what experts have to tell you? And what I want to do is tell you a little bit about my own experiences with this, and maybe that could give you some insight into how you should gather knowledge in your own life. Should you do your own research or should you listen to experts? Now, what I want to do right off the bat is explain what, to me, the way that I would interpret, just personally, the way that I hear the argument of trust the experts. And here's what it is. Imagine that you're somebody who's researched a topic top to bottom for 30 years. Your entire adult life has been spent researching something. And then some Yahoo comes along and they've got Google, right? And then they start to believe their own opinion. I got my own views on it. I got my own critical thinking on it. because maybe they went down some wormhole in a chat forum, or they got put on a text list or something like that, and they got duped and deceived into information that's wrong, and maybe they have this sort of need to feel original or unique, like they don't just fit in with the mainstream, they're different, and so they want to have their own belief that is not one via the experts. I've even heard ideas like, all knowledge comes from within. And imagine if you're somebody who's an expert and you're thinking, no, right? You're like, no. They might even say all knowledge comes from without, right? From outside of yourself is where you'd gain knowledge. So that to me is the basic argument of listening to experts, that there's just so many bizarre internet chat rooms and people out there that are faux experts and people that have alternate viewpoints that are really just meant to be, high levels of clickbait, just shocking things that they're doing to get attention, right? And I've been on the receiving end of this, to where I've actually been the expert in many areas of my life. And there's areas that I have worked on for several decades. And, sometimes the story is kind of boring, right? Like sometimes the story is, hey, that person who went out for 2 decades and did something again and again and again and again, and they just did this to the point that it's ridiculous, and they kept an open mind the entire time and tried to poke holes in it the entire time, and how that their ideas are just shared and widely popular. That's just because they're kind of accurate. So I felt that being an expert and being a leader in a subject matter myself, and seeing other people that, they want to get clickbait and they want to get attention. They want to show everything you learned is wrong is a very common clickbait, and people will go down that rabbit hole, and you can kind of get this alternative kind of tribe who just wants to see things differently. They don't want to like the thing that maybe gets the best results. They want to like the thing that makes them feel different. So that's this idea of trusting the experts. Like, just because you have Google doesn't make you an expert, right? Just because you meditated doesn't mean that that you're an expert in how to play the saxophone or how to shoot a basketball just because you meditated. And particularly for somebody like myself, I'm very into meditation, and I'm very into Eastern gurus who actually do enjoy. And sometimes they'll say things like, all knowledge comes from within, and if you were just present to the moment, everything would add up, and you'd have everything you need. If you just found self-love, you'd have everything you need. If you just got present to the moment, you'd have access to the universal consciousness. I think some people call it in woo-woo circles the Akashic records, where you'd have access to all the knowledge of the universe that you could ever need, right at the tip of your awareness. And I'm definitely for meditation. I mean, you really do get access to just about everything that you do know, and a lot of higher levels of intuition just from meditating, so you can start to believe that's true. So I'm trying to paint the most sympathetic possible perspective here of following the experts, okay, and not doing your own research. So now that I've done that, and that I've tried to show why following experts and not doing your own research could be something that a lot of people believe in, and really something that drives people crazy. And every Yahoo who's got a Google account thinks they're an expert now. What I want to do is show areas of my life that following or that doing my own research actually really, really helped me. Some of which I can't share here, and others that I can. So one of them for me, for example, was I would go, in say the topic of attraction, I would look at magazines like GQ, and I would look at GQ, and it just seems so authoritative. It's got these incredible celebrities in it, people, very beautifully written articles, really has a lot of authority. Things like GQ, things like AskMen.com and others that are just beautifully produced. And they would have different experts on, say, the topic of social skills or attraction. So some of the ideas that I got from those articles at the time were, if you have a really, really clean car, that's a very attractive quality. Or if you just went and got a really expensive watch, well, every person should have a really nice watch, have a nice house, maybe have a good degree, and they're all going to be waiting. Maybe go hit the gym, and they're all going to be waiting, which I think are all very attractive things to have. And so from that standpoint, the mainstream advice there does make a lot of sense. So what I did, funny enough, was I followed the experts. I went to Queen's University in Kingston, Ontario. It's kind of like a Harvard or Yale in Canada. Probably never heard of it, but in Canada, it's a famous school. I went to this kind of Ivy League school. It's like castles with ivy coming off it. You could look it up. It's Queen's University in Kingston, Ontario, Canada. And I got in the gym, and I was pounding the weights for about 2 years, started wearing form-fitting clothes that could show me pounding the weights. I don't think that I ever hit elite level fitness, but I put on a lot of muscle at the time. I got in my best shape. I went and got a several $1,000 watch. This is all 21, all at 21. I have a several $1,000 watch, the best clothes that I ever owned. I was doing my best, kind of maximizing my appearance, hitting the gym, wearing the clothes, wearing the watch, going to school, had a brand new car. And I had my own house that I got a mortgage on. I think I already said that, right? I had my own house that I had a mortgage on. I'm 21 years old. I'm thinking, I've got a mortgage. I've got a new car. I've got this watch, everything. That's going to create, very, very powerful social outcomes and a lot of attraction with people if I'm willing to go out and do that. So that was really what I thought at the time. And I followed the experts. Now, it was interesting because I'd go meet people, and I can remember I'd start vibing and joking around a little bit. And then whenever I'd mention my car or my house, or, I'd even try to like pull my sleeves up on my muscles a bit. What wound up happening was I could actually see the person who I'm talking to, the light in their eyes would go out and they'd actually start losing interest in talking to me. And I remember thinking, there's something here I'm just not seeing. And I think that I've just got to get out there and start doing social experiments myself, maybe start looking at some weird chat forums and right? Like looking in some weird wormholes and seeing what's out there. And I wound up doing that. And the experience that I had was very, very beautiful. I wound up having amazing success way past anything that I could ever imagine. Some people in the world have more, some people have less, but I went so far past anything that I could imagine. And my life became a lot like kind of my own fantasy. It was like a fantasy life that I had for many, many years. And, I'd say in the past year, I've been focused more on shooting this backlog of videos. If you're not aware, I've been traveling the whole country. I'm shooting, it's going to be 1 year's worth of videos, and that's 52 videos, but each video is about 2 hours. So it's almost like I shot something like 500 videos this year. Like this little clip here, I shot about 500 of these this year, just all over the country. And I'm putting together what is my version of my own masterpiece of my 40s. So I haven't had a ton of time to be going out. Got a little bit here and there, and definitely having some success and definitely having some fun. But up until, basically the lockdown, my social skills and my social life have been just ridiculous. And my success have been just far past anything I could have ever imagined my whole life. And I learned that and had that life that a lot of people would dream about having, to be honest, by doing my own research, by going out, doing experiments, doing social experiments, and going down some weird internet rabbit holes and participating in those and sharing ideas. I had this amazing outcome. Now, funny enough, I will never get in this year, and I will never, ever talk about this year, but I wouldn't say that I have anything to share about my health because I'm one person, and what I've done with my own health is only one anecdote, and that's not me, doing a double-blind study or anything like that, but I just did some of my own research on that, and interestingly, I haven't been sick so much as even a common cold in just shy of 10 years. So are we in 22? What year is it? We've been on the road, so I don't even know. What year are we in?
2021.
Okay, yeah. I've been on the road nonstop shooting these videos, just teaching programs and just on the road in all these different parts of the country just going crazy. So I barely remember the year. But the point being is this. In 2022, it'll have been 10 years for me. And that's something I did for myself. I'm not somebody, I'm just an analogy. And so I never did a double-blind study, but I studied up. And so I've had really, really powerful outcomes for my vitality and so on and so forth. And I was able to get my mind a lot sharper. So same thing, right? So, I was told a lot of different things about this topic. And instead I did my own research. And again, I can't tell you what to do or what result you're going to get. I'm not saying that. I'm not making any larger claims about anything going on at all. I'm just saying as an anecdote of me personally, not you, but me, I was able to figure out a formula to where I have a lot more vitality and my life's just been amazing. Now, likewise with public speaking, the experts would be, say, Toastmasters, and I have no doubt they have a lot to say that's very, very powerful. But what I did was I did my own research, and I went out and I tried different things, and I got to the point that I could speak to a 700-person room without a microphone. You ever see these videos where it looks like I'm just screaming, going crazy? In many of those, my microphone or here, I've got one here, is connected to a receiver so that I'm recording it, but it's not connected to speakers. I sometimes use speakers. I think it's healthy too. Sometimes my voice can go out, but largely I can speak to 200 people, 500 people, 700 people, maybe just shy of 1,000 people without a mic. And a lot like an opera singer, my voice just goes boom and it just shoots out. Likewise, I had suicidal depression. Oh, and by the way, with public speaking, I learned how to do things like free association, free associate, just talk off the cuff. Go into this video right now with a ceiling of an idea, share it with you off the cuff, and just do it and stay present through the process. A beautiful experience, right? So it's the exact same kind of thing. Now, likewise, with happiness, I was suicidally depressed. I wish I was dead every day of my life. It was very, very sad. I would often be walking down the street and I would just not even have the will to go on because I was so depressed that, frankly, I couldn't even motivate myself to walk home and go into warmth. And eventually, when it got so cold, I felt like I'm gonna freeze to death, then I'd find the motivation to go home. And I was told by my doctors, the best way to handle that. And I tried some of the things that they gave me, that you could probably guess what those were, and I found it just made me feel very numb. And that's one person, it's an analogy, it's not, double-blind study, so I'm not telling you what to do or giving you advice at all, by the way. But in my own case, that was what happened. And then I wound up doing a lot of research on how to change my perspective, on changing my, my dietary intake, the way that I'm sleeping, different things that are really, really high in nutrients that I did. And also a big one is changing my perspective. And instead of being somebody who was depressed and wishing that I was dead and having friends who were dead and having a cousin who died from suicide, I got to the point where the opposite outcome happened. And I wouldn't say I'm the happiest person in the world by any means, but I deal with a lot of stuff. And every day I've got a grind and a hustle that I deal with. And I mean, some of my buddies will say, I've never seen you mad. I've never seen you angry. And that's not true. I can get angry, but many of my friends I'm around all the time have never seen it, or I've never seen you upset. That's not true. I do get upset sometimes, but it's very, very rare. And it almost feels like, people who say they shoot testosterone in them, and what they like about it is that their testosterone level just stays even all the time. That's kind of how I feel with happy emotions. So that's kind of a cool thing too. And that was all done by my own research, and that's an issue. Now, here's what I don't like about this. Okay, so what I do like about, the establishment saying, we know who the experts are, and what we're going to do is we're just going to tell you who the experts are so that you don't hurt yourself. What I like about that is that there probably are some people who don't hurt themselves. So that's an interesting point. And I'm very open-minded to different points, and to realize that everybody has their own biases, that I'm biased, that you're biased, that everybody's biased. And so I can see how, if you want to stop, minimize harm, what you want to do is say, hey, no, you got to be an expert. And I get that. But you have to understand that from my perspective, I've been one of those people who goes outside the Overton window or thinks outside the box for 2 decades now. And all the great things in my life, I can't believe I forgot this. I also was told that going to college was going to be the way to making money, and I went down some weird internet rabbit holes about internet marketing, weird rabbit holes, and they told me things that I thought were impossible, and I wound up learning how to do multi-million-dollar launches at the snap of a finger, at the drop of a dime. Just make a couple videos, couple $1 million. Whoa, right? And I learned that by going down a rabbit hole. So imagine, look at my health, wealth, relationship, higher purpose. All of those, everything valuable in my life, my spiritual growth, everything that's meaningful to me, even the way that I do parenting, which I figured out on my own, which I'm really, really proud of, by the way, was by me doing my own research and going down weird internet rabbit holes. But here's the main key of it. What I believe that I had going for me was that I'm willing to research something and to be really, really open-minded. But what I was always doing, and here's the main key, I think, the whole thing, was I was always looking, and still do to this day, look to poke holes in my little theories, right? My little Google internet theories. What I do is I cross-test them, basically by scientific method of empiricism. I get out there and test different things all the time, and I see what the results are. And then what I do is I try to find people to poke holes in what it is that I'm doing. And by the way, not the people who want to make the clickbait, like the truth about this, that it sucks. Those are not people with good intentions, but people who have constructive criticism and want to add to it, right? So it's one thing if someone's trying to subtract from it and just make a scene. It's another thing when somebody's trying to add to it, saying, hey, you could do even better. Let me help you. Let's collaborate together and let's help each other. And that's really, really cool. And so for that reason, what I do is I keep around very, very different people around myself. People who are so different. So like the most woo-woo spiritual people, the most savagely kind of psycho moneymaker type people that are in the establishment. I have friends that are at the top of the establishment, including in big tech, including in government, including in the White House, everywhere. I've got friends like that. And then I've got friends that are street hustlers. So I've got friends that are super into their looks and their appearance and being jacked. And I've got friends that look ridiculous but have crazy hella confidence and get amazing results. So I keep a wide range of counsel around me, and I bring people into groups, and I have really, really powerful conversations, and I'm always looking for what it is that I don't know, and I enjoy that. So the key here is this. I get dopamine from what I don't know. I associate me figuring out that I'm wrong with winning. Now, why is it that a lot of people, they don't like that? Well, I think a lot of people that are in you almost have a line here, you could call it, underneath the line is coping, and over the line is thriving, right? So when you're thriving, let me give you 2 characteristics. Number 1 characteristic of thriving is that you love seeing other people winning. Why? Well, when you're thriving, you see somebody else winning, you have the belief that you can do that too. So when you see, like, you can see somebody winning, and maybe they're not even really winning, but in your mind, you're like, they are winning, because you just want to believe that you can do it, so you get excited by it. You feel that you can do, like, what one man or what one human can do, another can do. That was from the movie The Edge with Anthony Hopkins. Says, what one man can do, another can do. I love that scene. I always believe that. Or at least when I went into thriving, I believe that. So that's one thing. But another thing is that you actually get dopamine, not just from compliments. You appreciate compliments, and they mean a lot to you because they show you that people are receiving what you're doing. So you feel well received when you have a compliment. You're like, oh, I'm being received. Thank you. Thank you. You know, that's beautiful. I love you for that. Thank you. But you get also just the same amount of dopamine when actually you're getting feedback that's saying that you're wrong, because you attribute that to even bigger wins. So the question is, do you want to feel right or do you want to be right? Do you want to feel like you're winning or do you want to win? And so people that are thriving, they love seeing other people win, and they celebrate the wins of others, and they also love constructive feedback so they can win even more, and we can all win together. People in coping, on the other hand, what they tend to do is they tend to thrive off only compliments because they need it, right? So they get triggered easily, as we know. They get triggered, and they get upset, and they feel very easily offended, and, you know, perpetual sense of grievance and offense. But then at the same time, they feel angry at other people's wins. So they see somebody else winning, they want to find a way to cut it down, because why become Michael Jordan when you can criticize Michael Jordan, be the critique of Michael Jordan? You don't have to go do all those reps. It's just an easy way that you can feel like you're even better. And that doesn't mean that every criticism is bad, though. See, a lot of criticism is healthy. It's people who are being constructive, who are looking at you, and they're not talking at you and yelling at you and trying to pump themselves up by ripping you down. But what they're doing instead, they're just saying, hey, can we talk? Maybe even privately. Hey, could I pull you aside? Let me talk. Hey, you know, I love what you're doing, and I can see how hard you're working. Have you ever considered this? And it's like, and you love that idea. So see, what I think has happened, sadly, is that we're seeing now in 2020, this kind of culmination of what I believe are some shortcomings in the education system. Now, notice I'm not saying the education system is bad. A lot of people take it there. I mean, imagine being a teacher and working all day with some of these crazy kids, like my kids, and you know, and having everybody saying that what you're doing is terrible and you're doing your best. I love the effort and the grind and the love that a lot of our teachers have. Some of them also get jaded with it, and maybe they shouldn't be teaching anymore. It's kind of a mix. Some of them teach from an agenda, political agenda. That's sad too. But many of our teachers are really, really putting in their best effort, right? But if I could add some value to that, wouldn't it be amazing if in our curriculum we added more ideas about critical thinking? What is a straw man argument? What is an ad hominem attack? What is a steel man argument? Okay, so by the way, ad hominem attack is that you just say, this person's bad, so everything they say is wrong. Okay, you're attacking them on the person, you're not attacking their point of view itself. That's common, ad hominem. Another one is straw man argument, straw person argument, where you create the worst version of that person, then you attack, you make your argument against the worst version of that person. Funny how people do that too. I feel that, you know, a lot of time I'll read critique about myself and I'm looking for some great feedback from it, but it's a straw man argument where things that I'm saying are being taken completely out of context. Often even in videos that I've seen with critique, I'll see people that literally say, don't listen to Owen, you've got to assume value. And I'm like, that's jargon that I popularized. Like, they're arguing, they're doing a straw man argument and saying that their position is using jargon or teaching methods that I'm the one that popularized. It's completely insane. I can't get value from that other than just to kind of think it's a little bit funny. But what I can get value from is something called a steel man argument. And a steel man argument is where you actually give the strongest position of the person and you tear it down. So in many ways, and I'm not trying to tear anything down, but just trying to show a different perspective, look at how I came in this idea of, should you do your own research or should you trust the experts? And what I try to do was try to show the best possible argument for trusting experts and actually showing that it's not this one-sided thing. It's not always just a bunch of bad people trying to, you know, put you into this kind of like derp state. There's people that may also have good intentions. There's bad and good, right? There's people that, you know, say trust the experts and they're actually coming from really, really nefarious intentions, really bad at levels that are almost hard to even relate to. If you don't have thoughts like that, it's hard to even imagine how bad thinking they are. But there's also people that legitimately, like legit are just looking at people going down a Google rabbit hole and they're like, what are you doing? You're going to harm yourself. You're going to harm others. You're going to spread bad information. What are you doing? You got to stop, right? This horns honk in the background, even as I'm saying this. You got to stop this, right? And so, and you know, and then the powers that be come in and say, hey, we're going to stop this kind of talk. You're not going to be allowed to talk about that. But the problem with that is that when they say, no, we choose what the expert is, the good side of that is that it stops the weird rabbit holes and stops people from harming themselves or others. But the bad side of it is that think of all those cool things that I just mentioned. Learning how to do multi-million-dollar launches from maybe an internet rabbit hole. Learning how to, I mean, again, I can't tell you what to do or how to handle your vitality, but learning a lot about vitality, in my case, just not telling you what to do at all, but just saying what I experienced, because I don't share this stuff, but just what I experienced just by following really good fundamentals of vitality. And my past 10 years and how beautiful that's been. Think of all the weeks of work that I didn't have to take off. It's just amazing. Or things like my happiness, or waking up something inside myself that really connects to something higher than myself, or learning about social skills, learning about how to go out and meet people and having an amazing fantasy life, traveling the world, being out here, you know, running a successful business while being out here traveling the whole country in the most beautiful place in the world. So it's interesting, right? And it's an interesting debate. But what I'd say is, on one side, yes, there's a good point to that. But on the other side, most of what I learned is through my own research. So what do schools need to be doing at a younger age? Teaching people how to think critically. Saying, hey, it's okay to have your own idea. It's okay to go and do your own research. In fact, go do that. But contrast that against experts. And don't make some little click where you feel like you're this kind of alternate point of view and that becomes a sense of identity, and then you can't even learn from other people that might have had a lot more experience than you, and you just make this little side tribe as a way to kind of feel cool and different, like kind of like a hipster but of ideas, right? Like, you know how hipsters will, like, they'll literally like ride like the worst bike, they'll smoke the worst cigarettes, drink the worst beer. Not necessarily, but you know my point, right? Because they want to be different. They want things to be difficult to be different. If you do that with ideas, it could be a very bad idea, it could be a very negative outcome for you. So don't do that. Instead, what you should do is be open-minded to all ideas, put them to the test, contrast different ideas, and be very, very open-minded to what experts say to you, but also be aware of biases. And what are some of those biases that you might see in an expert? Well, a lot of expert opinion can be purchased. We know that. I mean, 1,000% can be purchased. Something like GQ magazine, let's be real. Later, as I kind of went down the rabbit hole, and I actually got to meet people at places like that, and many of them, I found out that a lot of these articles were being written by college interns. And what they would do is they would just put, you know, the kind of evolutionary pressure for them was put on making the magazine look nice and having celebrities in it and having a nice glossy picture and having distribution and reach, but they weren't putting a ton of focus into the content itself because they weren't really being, that wasn't really being monetized for them, so they didn't really care, right? And then I wound up being on the receiving end of that and humiliating myself for many years. So you see this, right? It's like, realize that, you know, there's kind of a bias everywhere. There's a bias with experts, like I said, and there's also bias with the alternative point of view. There's biases everywhere. People get dopamine from feeling like they're correct, and people don't want to admit they're wrong, and they want to be in a tribe, and that's a bias you have to consider. Here's the last thought that I'm going to give you about information. Here's the last thought. I think this could be pretty powerful for you, so here's my final idea. Then it's getting dark out here. I've been shooting for 2 days now, shooting all over. It's been stunning and beautiful. Maybe I'll put a couple little shots in here, and you can see some of what I've been shooting. It's really, really been a beautiful experience. But anyway, I'm going to give you one final idea about 3 ways of getting information. Here's what it is. So I personally like to categorize information in 3 levels. One of them is weird rabbit holes, okay? And that's where a lot of the most potent information comes from. Like, I mean, say with Eastern philosophy, right? Like if you read some of these like really wacky rabbit holes about getting present to the moment, like you could read some really wild stuff. It is super potent, but it's also very, very biased. It hasn't really been put through a lot of scrutiny, right? Something more mainstream has been put through a lot of filters of scrutiny, right? But the idea being is that many times these weird rabbit holes have the most potent information, but also can be the most biased, kind of the most out to lunch, the most kind of untested. But a lot of the seeds of really powerful ideas that later get super popular can come from these little rabbit holes. That's kind of cool. Then what you can do is the next level is somebody who's a little bit more reasonable, not like full mainstream dumbed down, but more reasonable, can go into those rabbit holes, pull the gold out of them, and sift out the biases, okay? So a lot of what I present is, I'm trying to kind of present at that second level. Sometimes I'll present at the third level, like, here's my kind of wacky idea that I have, and you'll hear me say that. I'll say, hey, I got a pet theory. It's not for sure. For example, if I made a video about high vibration versus low vibration energy. I shot that in this beautiful boat ride in New York City, and the very first thing that I say in it is, this is a pseudoscience, it's a pseudopsychology. Don't take it as dogma, but I think it's really cool. I got a ton of value from it. It's actually part of the ideas that I got about being happy, and they really changed my life in insane ways. But I'll say, like, you know, this is kind of some stuff from that third layer, but I'm going to relate to you kind of at that second layer, okay? So that's where, you know, something like hardcore Buddhism or Zen or Taoism, somebody like Eckhart Tolle, you know, that's the more like really down a rabbit hole, even though it's actually very popular and well known. But somebody like Eckhart Tolle can come in and he can talk about maybe being more focused on being present to the moment and make it more accessible and get the main gold out of it. Then at the lowest level, to me, is where, you know, it's at the mainstream. And unfortunately, the good side of the mainstream ideas is, here's the good side, it's been put through a lot of filters. Maybe it's been, you know, they might call that like, you know, a national conversation or a media-based conversation about a certain idea. And everybody in the media and all these different sides have kind of put their 2 cents on it. So that's really good, actually, because you're less likely to, you're a little bit less likely in some cases, but there's a counter argument, groupthink, we'll get to that. You're less likely in some cases to get wrong information because it has been put through a filter, and, you know, different media pundits and experts have come in and weighed in on it. The downside, though, is that there's also a lot of politics behind that, because there's everything from corporate interests, corporate media, and people that are ultra rich that control the media, who then can come in and, you know, say that say that the media itself, that same organization or people who own it, also have shares in, some other business that, they want you to be, they want you to participate and engage with that other business, they're going to probably make you bias towards that, right? Because we would think that the media would cater to just giving the most accurate information possible so they get more viewers. But in reality, what do we know about the media? Either A, they cater to clickbait, like I said, that weird little rabbit hole of the crazy talk, everything you know is wrong. They cater to that more, shock titles, or conversely, they cater to that mainstream corporate interest, right? Where you have some multi-billion-dollar company and they have a piece of that media, and then they're kind of giving the scripts to some extent. And they might have a little bit of controlled opposition in there too, but they're kind of moving the needle there on their agenda, right? That's why they say it's the agenda. That's why they'll say that. That's what's going on, right? So what can happen is that a media organization can actually get paid more by going to a multi-billionaire. That multi-billionaire can pay more than advertisers can from regular middle-class folks watching TV and giving their viewership. So a lot of this stuff gets very, very biased. It's put through political lenses, and ultimately a lot of that kind of third-level information, again, the weird rabbit hole, the kind of the second level that I try to be, or Eckhart Tolle tries to be, where you get the value out of it, but you're not as crazy. And then that third level in the mainstream, what winds up happening is that they kind of have to find a synthesis of that information that everybody can sort of digest. And in many ways, that's both a positive and negative what the media does, where they'll take powerful information that can help you personally, and then they kind of dumb it down to where it doesn't annoy anybody, it doesn't rub anybody the wrong way before that's allowed to hit the mainstream, where, people that are a little bit more impressionable and kind of just listen to that, the fancy lights and the, the fancy suits and whatnot, they listen to that, right? Because it's amazing, like, if you look at independent creators, say for example, independent media, they're typically incredibly good public speakers, they're really self-reliant, their research is really sharp. People who are more in corporate media, they're very, very confident because they know they have the backing of this huge establishment. But if you were to take those same people in corporate media and tell them to make, say, a channel online and social media, and they had never been known through corporate media, like they'd never been put on a big news thing or whatever, a big show, most of them would not make it independently. So they're a little bit propped up, right? How do you prop them up? You put a lot of production value on what they're doing, make the production value amazing. And then what you do is you get a lot of viewership by just buying airtime. You can purchase the reach. And then you just put in some regular person in there and you turn them into this like deity. It's kind of a little bit like what happened to Britney Spears, right? It's like she gets kind of plugged into the machine, and they provide the reach and the airplay and the crowds and the production value. And then what winds up happening is people follow Britney, and she's great, and she looks like a really nice person, but a lot of people follow her just because of the social proof, right? And there's a large portion of our population that only likes ideas that are socially proved. Because maybe they lack confidence, right? And if you lack confidence and you're not confident enough to have your own ideas, then the way your mind works is it doesn't say what is accurate. Your mind doesn't say, is this true? Your mind says, do I feel safer to believe this? Like, do I get clout in the tribe if I say this? That's why you'll see a lot of people that are like, I think this, right? Right? I submitted, right? And it's like, you're just saying this, you're parroting back this thing that you heard, right? Because if somebody doesn't feel safe, if somebody's in coping and not thriving, they often will just repeat back things that they think are raising their status and raising their safety within the group. Where somebody who's truly confident looks at something and says, is this accurate? The challenge is that some people that are also not confident want to get a tribal identity in some weird clickbaity alternative view, and that's where bad information gets spread because it can really spread like wildfire. And that's kind of the argument, against doing your own research and trusting the experts, right? So there's two sides of the argument here. I am, of course, highly biased towards doing your own research. Why? Because everything in my life was from my own research. But again, I didn't just want to feel like I'm right. I put that to the test against conflicting opinions all the time. Anybody who's sincere in their desire to help, I put that against conflicting opinions, not people trying to get attention for themselves and just get into my eyeballs on me and stuff like that, but people that are genuine about it and sincere. And likewise, after years of trying to poke holes in it, I'm also just continually iterating it and trying to improve it and doing everything that I can and really measuring the results, watching it and seeing if it's a false positive or getting a sense of what really yields a result. And it's from critical thinking. I was very, very blessed. I had a great critical thinking teacher in college, Arthur Sullivan, and Queens, and it was a beautiful experience, and he taught me about how to think critically, and that's what I've applied to my life. So train yourself on critical thinking. Don't just go with something you're told necessarily, but also don't just find an alternate view. Actually train yourself to see the reality in front of you accurately. Be open to feedback, open to suggestions, and then at the same time, also ask yourself, is this true? Over time, when you're more in thriving, you'll be better and better at making the correct call. That's all that I can tell you. There's a lot of people that'll say, hey, I'm not being strong enough on saying, it's always your call. And there's people who I'm not saying it's strong enough on, hey, you're not born a genius, trust the experts. There's people who have, their opinion on both. It's one of those arguments that's very philosophical. I happen to bias on the side of thinking for yourself. Why? Like I said over and over, everything in my life that I have to be grateful for, just about all of it, just about all of it came from me just trying to look a little deeper, into things. And that's what I want for you. Okay, I love you very much. End of a beautiful couple days of shooting here. I'm gonna shoot a little bit more out here tomorrow in Acadia Park in Maine. And thanks for being here with me. I'm just putting out some quick short videos on my path to releasing a beautiful backlog, hopefully later in the year. Love you very much. Peace.